In 1994, Rare was a B-level studio in search of a hit. The brains behind the wonderful RC Pro-Am and the less than wonderful but popular Battletoads, Rare had yet to jump into the 16-bit circus, until a sizable investment into Silicon Graphics workstations and a penchant for banana-hoarding gorillas led them to create Donkey Kong Country. A visual marvel designed to defeat the market's 16-bit competitors, this platforming ape and his little buddy Diddy captured the imagination of millions, including me. As a 13-year-old, I lived for DKC, as did everyone I spoke to for these Super Nintendo interviews. This game is wildly and widely beloved. So why is my opinion wrong? We start with A Gamer Looks at 40 Regular Blue Williams as I share my deep, dark secret.
So the platformers were my jam, like the Super Star Wars trilogy. We got, of course, Lion King, Aladdin, the two standouts from Disney, but there was also like Mickey Mania and the Magical Quest with Mickey Mouse in it. There was Animaniacs. Gosh, I loved Animaniacs. And then, of course, we got to go with Donkey Kong Country.
Ah, yes. DKC.
DKC,
yes.
Baby.
Yes. I am not the biggest fan of Donkey Kong Country.
There are all kinds of shocks and twists and turns. No Super Mario Kart? You don't like Donkey Kong Country?
I loved it when I was a kid.
What kind of show is this?
I know, right? This is an evil show. This is evil. This is something your parents would not let you listen to.
No,
there's all sorts of blasphemy.
The devil
and
is
evil.
in this show.
I don't want to get into it too much. I played it recently within the last calendar year, right? So like that within the last 12 months, not calendar year, 12 months I've played it. I played with my kid. He pretended to play. I played it, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's fine. It's a perfectly fine platformer. I don't think it controls very well. I think it's a decent rhythm game because I think a lot of that game is just rhythm as opposed to platforming, which is trying to make decisions with limited information. This is more kind of just rhythm and bouncing along, especially the barrel stuff. That once you get into a rhythm with it, you've got to figure it out. I don't think it's particularly nice to look at. I think it's a pretty drab looking game, to be honest. I think
if you insult the music, I'm out of here.
No, the music's fine. I will say I'll say the water level is wonderful. It's the water level theme of DKC is exceptional. That's a great song. The rest of the music is fine. I will say fine. Fine to good. I haven't listened to the soundtrack in a while.
Okay, listeners, you need to @ Bill on Twitter.
Please do. And
@
tell
A
me why
Gamer
I'm
Looks
wrong
at 40 and tell him how freaking wrong he is.
That's fine. I will let you counter on this. And I just think it was a very good tech demo for what the SNES could do. Mm-hmm. I think it was an important game for the system because it was late in its life cycle and it needed to compete with the 32-bit and the 64-bit and all the bit war stuff going on at the time. I think it does that well as a tech demo. Like, hey, we have 8 layers of snow. Well, that's great, but I can't see my character jumping in my platforming game. Like, I can't see.
That's part of the challenge. When it starts to blizzard, it doesn't do that for the whole level. It's a very specifically engineered micro challenge.
It's a micro challenge?
Yes.
Not being able to see. Okay. That's
yes.
fair. And it's only one thing, right? I will say there's a lot of variety. I actually like the minecart. I know people don't like the minecarts. I actually like them. I think they're fun. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of variety, especially towards the end. You got the little rock dudes that you can stop and go, and there's lots of variety. That's a good way of putting it. I just never like the way it feels in my hands. Just feels floaty. Because you can say Mario's floaty, but
Mario's floaty.
Mario is floaty, but this is more rubbery, if that makes sense. Like I'm trying to control like silly putty almost. I don't know. It's hard to explain feel, of course, but I think it's a fine game that I don't think I'd play again. And I tried the second one, and I'm like, I don't like the first one. Why would I try the second one? I tried it, and at they're like 1.5 worlds. I'm like, this is way too hard.
Oh, wow. Now they're really going to go after you because most people prefer the second one to the first one.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I like the Wii ones. I like it was one of the Donkey Kong countries that were on the Wii. I thought that was pretty good. Really hard. Like really hard.
Yeah.
But good. I think I finished it.
Yeah.
Not for me. So feel free to, if people start adding me like crazy, I know people listening to this show. So that's like a bonus. So if people get really mad at me, I'm going to be like, hey, I've reached some people with this program. I'll let you rebut then. Donkey Kong Country, tell us why you enjoy it so much.
When Donkey Kong Country was released back in the day, I had never seen anything like it graphics wise. I know it was trying to compete with other consoles moving forward into like the 3D age, but this, I'd never seen anything that had the way it used colors, the way it used shapes, I'd never had a game where you could switch off characters that completely changed the way you approach the game based on which character you were playing. Fair. It was a game that was much like Super Mario World in that there were layers to it. You could just cruise through the game. Like, I also played it a couple months ago, just start to finish, sat down, whipped through it in like an hour. And you're like, yep, still got it. I can do it. But if you want to get the full 101% completion, which I have done, you got to work hard for it. There are a ton of secrets in there. And you have to get every single banana in every single level, which is really difficult.
That is brutal. I've gotten all the secrets. I don't think I ever got all the bananas. And I tried it when I did this last time. I think I ended with like 59% or something. A very pedestrian completion.
Yes, very.
Well, because halfway through it was like, I don't want to find these things, and he doesn't care. It's just graphics on a screen to him. He thought it was neat. When it comes to graphical fidelity, it was extremely impressive for the day. I mean, it was amazing to have that. That was like the stake in the heart for the Bit War people, for my Genesis friends. Like, yeah, look at Donkey Kong Country. That was made on the same computer that made Terminator 2. All right, listen. All right, you lose. You've now lost. So go back to 6th grade English.
Yeah, and if you weren't sure you lost, just give it another year or two.
Exactly. But I just don't think they're terribly nice to look at. Like, they're really cool graphically, but I think they're kind of drab almost. They're not. They're just...
Agree to disagree, Bill.
That's fair. Yes. We agree to disagree on that one. But I will say the music's good. I'm going to listen, after this, I'm going to listen to the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack again, just to kind of refamiliarize myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it stands out worlds above everything else that was available. I mean, there were some excellent soundtracks on the Super Nintendo, mostly associated with the RPGs. But as far as platformers were concerned, this was music like you never found anywhere else for a Donkey Kong game.
Yeah. And it was interesting too, because Donkey Kong was like C-level Nintendo character at the time. Like, no one had heard from Donkey Kong since 1985. So to resurrect this character and kind of give him this persona, and I will say Cranky Kong's still pretty great. I love me some Cranky Kong. He kind of rules. But,
and that was part of the fun of the game was, there was a world map to explore. There were other characters to interact with. So it felt like more than just grinding through levels. Yeah,
no, definitely. It definitely attempted to have some personality for sure. Yeah. Hey, like you said, agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree.
You make very salient points, so I won't begrudge you for your opinion. You're in the majority, the vast majority. Yes. So don't worry about that. She's like I'm not concerned, Bill. You're
no,
wrong,
I'm really not worried.
Listening back to that, my opinion hasn't changed since that interview a few months ago, but I think I can express it a little more succinctly, or maybe a little better. than I did with Blue, but the sentiment remains the same. Just not the biggest fan. However, there are tons of fans out there more than willing to share their love of Donkey Kong Country. One of those fans is Jeremy, also known as Ducks in Disguise on Twitter and on Twitch. Let's listen in as he shares why Donkey Kong Country might be among one of his favorite games. Of all the games that you've probably played for the SNES, which one would you say has the most personal impact on you? Maybe not necessarily your favorite, but like personal impact.
So personal impact is going to be, and it also happens to be my favorite, would be Donkey Kong Country. I remember that this was the moment for me when I got interested in the technology behind video games, because it was something that I'd never seen before. The way they digitized the 3D models and put them into sprites, it was really revolutionary at the time. I just remember being blown away at how this game looked. And then the fact that it was also a really fun platformer, which, as I've been saying, is my favorite kind of game. So you combine all of these elements with my favorite console, the Super Nintendo, and it became a magical experience to turn on that TV, flip the switch, and up comes that green Rare logo. And the sound comes in and everything. It plays that symphony. And then the Donkey Kong music starts up. So just seeing and hearing that, for me, just floods me with so many memories from childhood. Because that was another one that I played with my dad quite a bit. And we would pass the controller back and forth. I would get stuck on something, and he would, play the level a few times, die a bunch, swear, and then eventually beat it.
Nice.
But it was one of those landmark games for me. I will never forget my experiences running through it in those early days, and like I said, just that classic opening. Also the ending. I thought the ending was brilliant for the time when they put up the fake credits, and then the boss battle continues.
Yep. And honestly, that's almost cheating. That's like almost an insta-death, because you're watching the credits and you're like, wait, something's wrong here. What's with all the cave? I guess, wait, what? It's going back. What? Boom, he throws his helmet at you, or crown, and bam, you're like, come on. It's a very cheeky thing. It's funny you mentioned Donkey Kong Country. I need to do an episode entitled Bill is Wrong about Donkey Kong Country, because I don't love that game as much as a lot of people do. I have my issues with it. It's been well documented, so I won't go through it again. But it's a game I played relatively recently, and I kind of went through, like, is this like an Emperor Has No Clothes On situation? Because I loved it as a kid. Like, I'm with you. Like, man, I was all about Donkey Kong Country, finding all the secrets. Like, no joke. But playing it recently, I'm like, I don't know if I like this. It was really kind of one of those weird feelings of that cognitive dissonance. But games will change like that in taste and things like that. But
I run through it recently too, and looking at it with a critical eye. I mean, my reasons for having it my favorite are definitely through those rose tinted glasses.
Like, which is fine.
Even just looking at the sequel, Donkey Kong Country 2. I mean, there's more boss variety. Both the characters are fun to play as opposed to just one of them. There's a lot of improvements to that, but for me, just that, like I said, that was the game that got me into the tech side of gaming, and how visuals advance and things like that.
And there also was a lot of that tech stuff. With the 16-bit era was the first time we really cared about the tech of consoles, because that was a big part of the bit wars, was which console could render more sprites at a single time, and the marketing of these systems were pretty heavily into that. Super Nintendo has 16 million available colors, and the Genesis only has 32,000, et cetera, et cetera. So it's interesting how you say Donkey Kong Country got you into the tech side of it, because that was a big focus. The Silicon Graphics workstations, and I got the tape from Nintendo Power. It told me all about that stuff. They were really proud of that, because they were at that point fighting against the 32-bit systems and the Jaguars and the PlayStations of the world. So
that was when 3D was starting to become a thing. And I very much remember that, because you said Nintendo Power, and just, God, I love Nintendo Power.
It's so good. You know what the best thing to do when you have a wrong opinion? restate it over and over again to multiple people while you try to record a podcast. I do that exact thing with my best friend Joey, but luckily I get out of my own way quickly and let him share why Donkey Kong Country works for him. And the Super Nintendo always did a great job of pushing things technologically as well. I mean, you mentioned Star Fox with the FX chip, right? Nowadays, you look at the original Star Fox and you go, wow, how did we play space fighting games with 10 frames per second?
Yeah.
I don't know how
That's
did we
right.
do that. But at the time, it was revolutionary, right? Polygons,
Revolutionary.
16-bit system drawing polygons like the Jaguar tried to do.
That's right.
You know, like it was revolutionary for the time. Another one that comes up a lot when we talk about classic games is, of course, Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, good call. How the hell did we forget about that game? Good call.
It's a game I don't love. I loved it as a kid. I played so
Really?
much Donkey Kong Country.
Wow.
I played it recently with my son. It's fine. It's okay. I think it was an exceptional tech demo for what the SNES could do with the right programming, with the right design and art design. I won't get into why I don't like Donkey Kong Country very much as a game. That may be for another day or not even for this show. I don't know how me going on and on about that. But what was your experience with Donkey Kong Country?
Oh, yeah. Just amazing. Very animated, graphically very different. I think a lot of it that made push Donkey Kong Country graphically was Aladdin, believe it or not. Aladdin for Genesis was that was considered a hallmark game for them. That was like kind of a look at us game. Animation wise, it was graphically it was better than its counterpart for the Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah, definitely better.
Which was interesting because the Super Nintendo, as far as tech specs, was the better system. It was the better system over Genesis.
By far, yeah.
Far and away. So I think they wanted something of their own, and then that came, and it's again amazing. Just an amazing platform type game. I loved it. It gave me something different, something new. You're going through the game, and then it rains, and you're like, wow, this is great. It just got better and better. Then you were in the water. Again, great accompaniment music. Go back and look at the first water stage.
It's the water music of Donkey Kong Country is phenomenal.
The piece is beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's a gorgeous piece of music.
It's a different experience. And then you're playing more. Then you got the mine cart. Again, a totally different experience. It's a different level. It's like, wow, all right, this is fast. This is awesome. Then you get the snow, which is again a different graphical experience. Then I think you're in a cave and somehow the caverns are glowing. And I mean, graphically, there was nothing like it. I said, Jesus, look at this game. This is a beautiful game. And I want to say it came out 94, 95.
95, 90, one of those, yeah.
That's the end of the 16-bit, era. Let's face it. The following year, PlayStation, Saturn.
Yeah.
You've got the other generations coming out. And again, that's what made the Super Nintendo great. The lifespan, the shelf life of it. Even towards the later half of its life, they're still pumping out great games like Donkey Kong Country.
And finally, Jeff and Trevor from the New Dad Gaming Podcast spent some time talking about the marketing of Donkey Kong Country, because at that time in the 16-bit era, marketing was everything. Nintendo always lagged behind a little bit, but they did something that Sega never thought to do.
Can I throw you guys a bit of a curveball? I was curious about...
Go for it.
Because I swear this is how things went down, and I'm trying to remember if it's true. Because I was thinking through that Donkey Kong was probably the first one that I saw a full court press on media hype. Because I remember receiving, I don't know how I signed up. It's probably through one of those game magazines like Jeff had. But I remember receiving a banana yellow VHS tape.
Yep.
Before the game showed up, before it was released, and then like you popped it in, and it's like, this is how we've created the next generation of game, and it's going through all the art of it. So this game is yet to come out, and there's all the sizzle reel going on. Like, imagine the cost of sending like all these 12-year-olds like special banana colored VHS tapes, which, like how much did that cost alone, the coloring of it? And then finally the game comes out. Like, Am I way off on that memory? Because it almost feels like a fever dream when I describe it.
You're not. So was that the video with the they're up in the treehouse and they're talking to all the designers and and there's the goofy guy with the long hair who's walking around with the microphone doing these fake interviews. Yes. Okay. That was produced by Nintendo Power. I had the Power, Nintendo Power.
Okay.
And they sent a bunch of those kind of things. I have one for Star Fox 64. I had one for, of course, the Donkey Kong one. They were fighting hard against the 32-bit systems at that time. Because remember, Genesis came out first, so they were already working on the Sega CD, and 32X way late into that SNES life cycle. So when those games are out, we're already looking at 32-bit for the other systems, and 64-bit, for Jaguar was still coming out relatively soon. So yeah, they full court pressed their tech specs. The Silicon Graphics Workstation made Diddy Kong, and that was not a fever dream. That was not the result of bad milk in your cereal. That was a real thing that occurred. Jeff, did you remember that? Did you get one of those?
Yeah, I remember that. I had Nintendo Power for the longest time. So I do remember receiving that in the mail, and it was a VHS. I think mine, it came in like this case that was all like the jungle leaves on top. Yeah. So I remember it. Popped that in because I wanted to know what it was, and I think it was only like 10 or 15 minutes long. Yeah. But it put Donkey Kong on my radar because I knew about it obviously through Nintendo Power, and it looked interesting, but I didn't really know too much about it. But after watching that, I was on board. So whatever marketing Nintendo did with that totally worked on me. So yeah, that's not a fever dream. That was something that I think maybe all Nintendo Power subscribers, there's a lot of us, and then we just kind of faded out as we got older. So.
I had Nintendo Power for the longest time. I really did. I got the first, not to get into a Nintendo Power conversation, but I have the first one, the Mario 2 one, because I had the Nintendo Fun Club newsletter.
Oh, wow.
And the Nintendo Fun Club newsletter was a bi-monthly periodical, and that became Nintendo Power. So I got the first one. My mom didn't get me the first year, but then the second year I started getting them every month.
Jeez, an OG before Nintendo Power.
Early adopter, as they say.
Yeah, you couldn't stop either because the spines, when you line them up, would make an image, right? So you couldn't stop. You had to get the next one.
Sometimes it would. Yes, it would. After the break, we segue from swinging gorillas to slaying space pirates in a game that I actually like. No, not just like, love. Super Metroid, coming up next.
And then another game that stands out right there with Link to the Past is Super Metroid, of course. Another game.
Man.
Oh,
Why
God.
didn't I think of that? Oh, okay. Never mind. Forget everything I said. Super Metroid. It was Super Metroid. It was my favorite game of all time.
Of all time, yeah.
It was my favorite game of all time for the longest time until maybe 6 months ago when it was replaced by Mega Man X.
Okay. Wow.
And it's just sometimes things fade. It's just kind of like, I love Super Metroid to death. I think it's wonderful and glorious, but I just enjoy playing Mega Man X a little bit more. That's literally just subjective opinion, kind of thing. Super Metroid is a triumph of, not to steal your thunder. I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit because I love Super Metroid. It's a triumph of atmosphere.
Yep.
and exploration and gameplay exploration, and it's just there's so graphically, of course, it's a gorgeous game. Its art style is stunning. The soundtrack,
the story,
is
the soundtrack,
phenomenal.
yeah.
It's kind of its immersion storytelling is fantastic, and it's lightweight and gets out of the way. It's got emotional beats that I had never seen in a video game before.
That's a really good point. Really good way to say it. That's and those are the two things about those two games particularly, that they copy basically the first one, and that always doesn't work. You can have games, sequels, I mean, that veer completely in a different direction, and they work. Mario 2, a great example. Mario 2, the US version, I should say, it carries nothing of Mario 1 other than they're side scrollers. You're picking vegetables, you have a different enemy. It's completely different, and it works. And sometimes it doesn't work. And Zelda is a great example of that. Zelda 2 is panned and considered by many to be a failure. So when you go back and look at Zelda 3 and Metroid 3, by that I mean Super Metroid: Link to the Past, they took everything that was good about the first ones. Super Metroid took everything that was good about the original Metroid and turned it up to 11. And Link to the Past, they did the same thing. They went back to tried and true formulas. They said, let's just go back to everything that we love about the first game and turn the volume up really high.
Yeah, it's you're exactly right, and especially if you play the original Metroid, the original Metroid's great, but it has a lot of flaws. There's no map, which is really challenging in a game of that sort.
Impossible.
It's very challenging, which again is not the biggest deal, but especially when it comes to control, and there's some blind spots in the original Metroid, but Super Metroid just papers all that over, and it does so with this beautiful sheen of, again, just graphical prowess. Like you said, it's a perfect example. Everything's touched up to 11. It's an iteration that improves on everything from its predecessor.
From the original, right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And it's a perfect 10. And we don't give 10s out, you and I. But those games are perfect. And again, like Link to the Past, if you look at most top 100, top 50, top whatever video games of all time, you will find Super Metroid there as well. You'll find it somewhere in the top 5, top 10, whether it's floating at 6 or 3 or 4.
It's got to be there.
It will be there. Yeah, and it's always there on most lists. It is a flawless game.
Right, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's flawless. I think Super Metroid does have a couple of dead zones in it. But I'm talking, I'm not saying to be nitpicking, but it'd be kind of nitpicking if I were to sit there and start really picking apart Super Metroid.
Sure.
If you pick apart any game, you're going to find a flaw. You're going to find something that's not perfectly tuned. But as far as a complete work and a complete expression of what that game tried to do for the NES, which is, again, this basically kind of like exploring this empty yet full world, or you're the only human,
That's right.
Taking on aliens and just exploring this vast world. As far as capturing the sense of exploration that the first Metroid did, it's a triumph that was never equaled. I mean, Metroid never did it as well as, even with the Prime series.
Even with the Prime, exactly. Even with the Prime series or some of those great advanced games, they never ever emulated that type of level to it.
And finally, we close with my brother and I talking about Super Metroid, like we're sitting on a patio with drinks in our hands, just blowing by the time, talking about an amazing, amazing game. Let's listen in. How did you feel when you first turned on Super Metroid? You get that music, you get that the Metroid squeak in the corner.
It just sucks you in.
Yep.
No, and in a like Nintendo. And maybe Genesis did this too for certain games, but I remember like when Ninja Gaiden first came out, and I never played Ninja Gaiden, but I remember seeing like the cutscenes in Nintendo Power, and they had like these little widescreen cutscenes with text, and I was like, in a video game? That's crazy. The first time of me ever experiencing that was Double Dragon 2. That had similar cutscenes in the beginning, and I was like, and slowly, unbeknownst to us, like video games were taking their cues from movies. They were starting to sneak cinematics in little by little, whatever the system could handle. And Super Metroid, using sound and just the creepiness of space, the empty vacuum of space to its advantage, and also the graphic capabilities. I think so. The system was 16-bit, and then the cartridges had the capacity to go to 30, what was called 32 megs.
Correct.
Super Metroid was technically not 32 megs; it was 24, but that was still an advancement at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it also had an advancement in graphics. 32, for example, would have been Donkey Kong Country or Killer Instinct. That was the next last step. But before that, it was 24, and that was a big deal. And the way it used that, was it Mode 7, you said?
Yep, Mode 7 was the programming trick that allowed for that, like you said, that those vector movements. The tennis ball coming straight at your face, and disappearing into the background.
And so the spaceship just flying through space and just hearing the sounds of the spaceship, and then then you enter the spaceship. And again, unbeknownst to me, and this is a big building block of movies for me, it took a lot of inspiration from the first Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. In a way, Samus is entering the Nostromo on Alien, but it's its own version of that. But you're playing it. You're playing it all by yourself, and then you get attacked by was it the Metroid, or was it
you get attacked by Ridley. So
Ridley?
What happens,
yes, thank you.
Yeah, so what happens is you go through this abandoned space station. You see the first screen of the game where it says Super Metroid. It's a living space station that has some lights on it. You see the little Metroid in there. If you've never played Metroid 2 to that point, you probably don't know that's the Metroid from Metroid 2.
Right.
But that doesn't matter. It's just little cute creature inside this glass shell. Clearly it's a baby. It's little and cute. Yeah. And then when you go through this space station, you pass by that and it's shattered.
Yes, you do.
There's dead scientists all over the floor. Creepy. Yeah. And then what you're saying is you go there, you see the little guy in a jar, you walk over, you can't pick it up. The game pauses, like it just stops. It just it doesn't like freeze, but there's like a pregnant pause in the action. You just going back and forth. Okay, can't get out, can't leave. What do I do? Eyes, Ridley.
Eyes. Yep.
And then
beautiful, just beautiful. And again, like you're playing the first scene of a movie. You're playing the first act of a film. You're setting the stage. My memory's failing me here. You get out of there.
Well, what happens is you get a timer. You have the opportunity to fight Ridley with your little pea shooter. He destroys you and wrecks you. That's fine. Right. But you're not dead. You cannot lose this section, right? So I think you can actually lose this if you just dilly-dally out of the space station, but you're given an immense amount of time, like I think 3 minutes or something to get out. You can get out in one. And this is also tutorializing your motion and your jumping, the timing. This is all kind of
You're actually learning the controls. That's a good point.
Yeah, you're kind of. This is like kind of learning everything in this safe environment that you're not going to lose. And then you're right. You escape to your spaceship. And then you head over to, I guess it's Planet Zebes, I guess. I forget which planet it is, but I'm pretty sure it's Planet Zebes.
I think it's called Zebes, yeah.
And then you just begin your adventure. And the beauty of Super Metroid is its atmosphere. I mean, it's even when you land on that planet, your spacecraft, it's raining, right? Like,
yeah, that's right. You're outside and it's raining. Yeah, and the little music kicks in very subtly. I still remember it, a little, like I guess a MIDI trumpet, I guess you'd call it.
Yep.
And your adventure starts, and it has all what we didn't know at the time, I guess. Although I did play some PC games by that point. I did play Wolfenstein at some point, but you're playing sort of the first-person shooter mechanics, but in a 2D space. So you're finding keys to open doors, you're finding missiles and stuff to load up your weapons. Very similar mechanics. It was no surprise to me when Metroid Prime came out and it became a first-person shooter. I'm like, I mean, that's kind of always what it was up until that point. And then when they did Prime, they also knocked it out of the park. But that's for another story.
That's another episode when we talk about Metroid Prime and all that. The GameCube. I mean, it's Super Metroid is successful on, I mean, nearly every level. I mean, just forget about the visual fidelity, right? Forget about the graphics. Even just the sound. The way it feels in your hands is so wonderful, and because you have full control over every action that you're doing, and every weapon you receive is a multitasker. So it not only does it serve a purpose in combat, but it serves a purpose in either traversal or in opening up doors, of course, which is a hallmark of the series. But again, think about it. That's the first time where you had like not only red doors, but green doors and yellow doors. And so it's not
special missiles and special bombs.
So it's not just a weapon, it's also a key. So it does both things. And that's always really elegant when a game can do that properly. Yeah. I mean, Super Metroid, and of course, the climatic ending. Again, you talk about a cinematic game.
Before you get to that,
go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So again, like they took so many leaps in storytelling for the limitations of the system, but they really wanted to give gamers a story experience unlike before. And so as you go through the game, you go through certain bosses, you do pick up clues as to what might have happened on that ship.
Yep.
You do eventually run into the Metroid, but it's bigger now. And you do sort of fight it, but you somehow befriend it, or it starts to trust you.
So what happens is you come across, you get past there's 4 bosses. It's one of the few video gamey things you have to do in that game. You have to take out the four bosses, and each one of those, once you take them out, there's a big statue in one of the sections. It's one of the first places you come to in the game. This big mysterious statue.
Yeah,
once you defeat all of them, you go down to Torian, where I believe it's Torian, and you kind of go through, and you're navigating your way through, and all of a sudden you get to a very barren plain. It's a barren, and all the enemies there are husks. If you touch them, they turn to dust. Right? They're all they've been sucked dry.
Yes.
And then you come across this one enemy. Baby Metroid is now big Metroid. Jumps on that enemy, sucks it dry, and then jumps on you. And it takes you down to 1 unit of health, stops, gives you the little I'll cut that in so it doesn't sound like I'm like a madman rolling his tongue into a microphone. Or maybe I won't. And it notices you and it jumps on you, and no, actually it goes away. It recognizes you as his mother because you're the first person or creature it's ever seen in Metroid 2. And it goes away. Whoosh.
Yes.
Luckily, there's no other enemies. There's a health refill. And then, of course, we have the climactic ending when you reach Mother Brain.
Yes.
What did you think when you first fought Mother Brain, the classic style, and then Mother Brain turned into this monstrosity that filled the entire screen?
I just loved it. I wasn't
It's awesome.
Scared or surprised. I just thought it was cool. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
What was beautiful, and I'm trying to remember, like, you can't defeat, I mean, actually there's been videos where you can kind of defeat it with the weapons you have, but you kind of can't defeat it. And when you're about to go down to your last health, the Metroid comes back and attacks Mother Brain, and then the Metroid sacrifices itself and gives you these powers. Am I getting this right?
Yeah. Yes, correct.
And then after literally getting the heck beaten out of you through that whole fight, now you have this rainbow gun, and now you are just blasting Mother Brain to infinity, and it is so empowering.
It is one of the most empowering moments in video games. I'm sorry. Getting the hyper beam.
Yeah.
And here's a neat little thing you'll notice about that, and I'm almost positive this is right. Don't at me if I'm wrong. Or you can at me. Fine. If you at me, that means people are listening. That's awesome. So please, feel free. Throughout the game, you can go into your menu and you can select your weapons and make combinations. Nobody does this. You just leave it as default. But you can select... Yeah. You can combine your weapons to do different things. You really don't need to, but it's fun. Again, it's one of those pushing at the edges things. When you get the hyper beam, all that stuff is gone. You just have hyper beam. The game is like saying, no. You don't get to choose now. This is your end game weapon. And because every shot of that hyper beam to Mother Brain's, giraffe neck snaps her head back like she's getting into a head-on collision.
Yes.
Just every shot snaps her head back, and she's making this wailing noise of pain. Oh. It is like you said, it is you killed my good bro, Metroid, my little boy, and now I am going to annihilate you because you cannot be anymore, Mother Brain. And just the catharsis of that is so good. And of course, once you defeat Mother Brain, you have the whole escape out. You gotta escape, gotta go, and you hit the bricks. And even that escape is tense, but you have the hyper beam, you have enemies that you've struggled with, like Space Pirate said, the stone ones that
blowing through them now like butter.
You just blowing through them, one shot. It is one of the greatest weapons I think in games because again, like you said perfectly, it's just you're now empowered. You are empowered. Yes. It's amazing.
It's so empowering because you've been getting beaten up this whole time. And then for your own, you actually make other animal friends early on.
Yep.
And they kind of help you, I think, in either get on certain level platforms or they had a purpose to some of the puzzle elements of the game.
They actually teach you the advanced moves like the.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. The charge jump. Yes.
The charge jump and the wall jump. Yep. That's basically what they do.
Yeah. That's right. And but the only other creature you care about in the whole game to come and rescue you like that and then sacrifice, it's an emotional moment for a video game. And before that, like I said, I was playing baseball, so I wasn't ready for this.
No, of course not.
It is touching. Also, a little side note: when you escape, you could find those animal friends and rescue them.
Yes.
And it's not necessary, but it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And on top of that, when you escape the main big explosion, their little ship flies off in the corner. So you have that little satisfaction of doing that. It's literally 2 pixels, but it makes you feel good if you do it.
It doesn't really matter what I think of these games, right? Good or bad, positive, negative, aged like milk or still fine wine. All that really matters is the legacy they've left behind. Both Donkey Kong Country and Super Metroid are well-worn classics by any stretch of the imagination. So the question really is, what do they mean to you? Thank you so much for listening to A Gamer Looks at 40. If you enjoy the program, please check me out on Twitter at A Gamer Looks at 40. And if you really, really like the show, super really, then please subscribe, rate, and review on all the podcatchers out there, especially Apple Podcasts, and tell a friend, because more friends equal more stories, and that's what we're all about here on The Gamer Looks at 40. Thanks, as always, for listening.